Awesome. Nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come out for a post-legislative session review. We had a very interesting 60-day session, and I'm happy to be joining you to kind of let you know what happened and what didn't happen. But who am I? I am David Saavedra. I am your Government Affairs Director for the New Mexico Association of Realtors, your state association, and work very closely with all of our local associations across the state. And again, like I said, we'll be talking about what happened in the 60-day session, what didn't happen, and maybe what we can expect moving forward. And one of the most important things, we'll talk about Realtor Association advocacy and why it is so important for our organizations. We have a great group, so I think I want to take a moment and just kind of start from one end and go across and have everyone just quickly introduce themselves and say where they're from and what association they belong to. So let's start on this end. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for going around the room and introducing yourselves, who you're associated with, and what brings you here today. And that's one of the most important things, is that each of you are a different member with different expertise, and that's what makes realtor advocacy so important. And so that's kind of one of the first things that I want to start with in my presentation today is, why does realtor advocacy matter? Anyone want to shoot out some answers? I know all of you are very well seasoned. Yes, Mr. Chairman, Josh.
Well, we tracked 94 bills. Some of them were good, some of them were okay, and some of them were very bad. Realtor advocacy absolutely exists because things come up that we don't necessarily always know about. They just get stuck under the rug and passed where, actual legislation that harm us or harm property rights in general. And that's where why we're at the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Josh. Anyone else? Realtor advocacy? Why is being an advocate for the industry important? Perfect. Thank you, Gene. Anyone else? Homeownership does matter. Thank you, Tigo. Yes. Yes, it does. Absolutely. And I think one of the most important things about realtor advocacy is that we're not only advocating for our membership and the real estate profession, we're also advocating for the consumer, potential home buyers, sellers, anyone who's looking at the interest of transferring property. And as Tigo alluded to, the economic impact of a home sale in New Mexico is huge. It's 15.8% of the gross state product, and it generates about $21 billion within the last year. So the total economic impact of a transaction is about $114,000 in the New Mexico economy. So that is not something to sweep under the rug. That is very important. Property taxes as well. Those are important things that fund our local government, which we'll talk about today. But there are so many reasons that realtor advocacy is important. It's important for you all as members to advocate for your clients, and it's important for the associations to advocate for you all and your business and your industry. So that's why we're here today, and that's why realtor advocacy is important. And just think of this. The policies that shape our industry are written every single day. If realtors aren't at the table, someone else is writing the future for us. So that's why it's so important for us to make sure that we're a part of those conversations. At the local level, we're engaging with city council, with county commissions. At the state level, we're advocating at the Roundhouse, and at the national level, we're having those conversations at the White House and with Congress. And so that's kind of how the three-tier agreement goes. At the national level, we are advocating for federal policies with our members of Congress, and the National Association of Realtors is really leading that charge. At the state level, NMAR is really advocating and taking on those policy initiatives that impact every corner of the state, not just the central market, but all across the state. And then you all right here in Albuquerque are advocating at City Council and County Commission for policies that impact real estate at the local level. And real estate is very local, so our policies that are at the local level are some of the most important. What I will say, this is a picture of Albuquerque. It's a place that you all know and you're fond of. I'm a resident as well, but GAR's jurisdiction is much more than Albuquerque. GAR's jurisdiction expands through the surrounding areas, so it's important to be engaged at all levels, not just with the Albuquerque City Council, but Rio Rancho City Council, all of the surrounding areas, all of those municipalities are really important for our zoning codes and all of the things that go on. So those are some of the big reasons why realtor advocacy is so important for us. And when we work together, we are the Realtor Party. We're not blue, we're not red, we're purple. We're the Realtor Party. We advocate for real estate policies that are important for the industry. And it's important that we're doing that work at all three of those levels because they all complement each other. And sometimes what is a national policy goes down to be a local policy, and sometimes what happens at the local level actually ends up being a state policy. So it's important for us to all be on the same page of where we are, what's important to us, and the direction that we're going as an industry. So NMAR, since 1949, the New Mexico Association of Realtors has championed real estate and private property rights across the land of enchantment, advocating for our members, supporting the real estate industry, and protecting home ownership. We have about 7,500 members that live in every legislative district of the state. Every corner that you can imagine, there is a member there. Every legislator has a realtor member residing and doing business within its jurisdiction. We have 13 member boards, one of them being our Commercial Overlay Board, our Commercial Association of Realtors, GAR, and then our 11 others. But as you can see from this map, our local associations span the state, and we have members that rely on those associations in all areas and spanning all counties. I want to take a really quick moment just to highlight NMAR leadership really quick. Our current president is Dan Coleman from Roswell, Lois Suri, president-elect from Santa Fe, Amparo Usry from Gallup, she's a member at large, Todd Clark, commercial member, Colleen Deering is our past president from Santa Fe, and then we have a new CEO at NMAR, Rob Wigton. He comes to us with tremendous experience, and he wished he could be here today, but we had some state committee work that was happening this morning, so wasn't able to make the trek. And then we have our DVPs that represent all of the different areas across the state, the NMAR districts. Of course, Ms. Sherry Fowler represents the Central District on our executive committee, Clay Azar, the Commercial District, Andrea Dobbins from Northeast District, Northwest is Paul Berry, Wes Graham from Southeast, and Emery Simpson from the Southwest. I do want to highlight our legislative committee as well. This is a committee that does tremendous work throughout the interim, in between. During the session, we meet weekly, and sometimes these meetings are not quick. Sometimes, what was our longest meeting, Josh? Tell me. Yep. Yeah. So about 2 hours on average is what our legislative committee meetings were. We had some that extended 3.5, some that were a little under an hour. But this committee is so important because we review every single piece of legislation that is introduced during the legislative session. Does anyone want to take a guess of how many bills were introduced this session? 700? 7,000. Okay, we have 700, 7,000. Any other guesses? Tell me, Josh. Close to 1,300, that's absolutely correct. So this is 1,300 pieces of legislation that we review to see what the potential impact on real estate is. And funny enough, real estate connects to just about everything. And so we are reviewing every piece of legislation to see what that actual impact on the industry is. We had our Realtor Day at the Roundhouse during our legislative conference. Here's a quick snapshot of the individuals who were able to make it. Shout out to Gar for bringing the LDP group up to see how NMAR works and advocate on behalf of the Realtor Associations. So I want to talk a little bit about what our legislative policy priorities were for the 2025 session. First and foremost, we talked about housing affordability, availability, and accessibility. This is our bread and butter issue. We know that nationwide we're in a housing shortage. In the Albuquerque market, we're in a housing shortage. Across New Mexico, we're in a housing shortage. And so this is one of the most important priorities that we worked on. And in this year, just about every legislator decided that they wanted to work on a housing bill. So that was interesting to navigate through because everyone has their own ideas of how to fix the problem. Some of those ideas were good, some of them not so good. The good ideas travel fast, but sometimes the bad ideas travel even faster, so we have to be on the lookout for those. Our next issue is property tax policy. Of course, another bread and butter issue for us. Property taxes are important. They fund our local municipalities. But across the state, making sure that tax assessments and tax policies are equitable and predictable. Another is property insurance. We've had some very devastating fires across the state, so property insurance quickly became one of our most important policy issues that we were watching this session. There were quite a few bills that we tracked. Some of them made it across the finish line, some of them did not. Property crime. This is a new one for us. Property crime is super important. It impacts, who wants to come and live in Albuquerque. It impacts, where people want to live. And so this one quickly rose to the top. We knew that this was going to be a public safety and crime session, so it was important for us to have one of those priorities that reflects that. Water and natural resources, of course, very important for us. Water is scarce, water is life, so making sure that we're following those as well. And then last but most certainly not least, economic development, making sure that we're following legislation that provides jobs and encourages investment across the state. And so, to kind of quickly talk about how we come to our legislative policy priorities, the legislative committee gets together, we review what happened the past 2 sessions, because in New Mexico we go 30 and 60-day sessions. 30 days we just talk about budget and whatever the governor has on their call. And in the 60 days, anyone can introduce just about anything that they want to, and they do. But our quality of life statements guide our legislative committee, they guide staff, and they guide our executive committee on setting what those important policy priorities will be. So of course, protecting private property rights, that was one of the answers in the back today. That is one of the most important issues that we're focused on at all levels, of course. Growing housing opportunities and protecting the American dream. Supporting a vital and vibrant economy. Preserving the land of enchantment, and supporting quality neighborhoods and communities. So these statements live in NMAR's governing documents, and they help to guide those policy priorities that we're able to change every single year. And so that's what drives our purpose and why we advocate at the state legislature. So now that we kind of have a little bit of the background, I'll talk a little bit about what happened during the session and kind of what comprised this legislature. So we are currently in the 57th legislature of the state of New Mexico, and there are 2 chambers in the legislature, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives has 70 members that represent all areas of the state. They run for office every 2 years, and the minimum age to run is 21 years old. The Speaker of the House is the leader of the chamber, and of course the presiding officer is also the Speaker of the House. The House does have a narrower constituency. The House is known to be a little bit more focused on connecting with constituents because they are representing fewer people. They are able to connect with a lot more people, and so that is how the House is set up. There are currently 44 Democrats and 26 Republicans in the House, and as I mentioned, Javier Martinez of District 11 is the Speaker, so our Speaker is from the Albuquerque area. The Senate is a little bit different. There are 42 members in the Senate, and they run for office every 4 years. So that means that every 4 years, our entire legislature is up for re-election. This is it's very different. Not many states have all of their legislators up for election, so the RPAC trustees definitely have fun in interviewing candidates those years. But it's an opportunity for change. It's an opportunity for new voices to be heard in the legislature. And it's a new opportunity for us to get realtors to run for office. Wink, wink. So if anyone's interested in running for office, we always need realtors at the city, the state, and the national level. So there are opportunities available. If that's something you're interested in, please do let me know. The minimum age to run is 25 on the Senate side, and the leadership is actually shared by a committee. It's called the Senate Committees Committee. So there's not one singular person that has all of the power in that area. But the presiding officer is actually not a member of the Senate. It is the lieutenant governor. So the lieutenant governor runs the Senate, and all 42 of those members are voting members. They do have a broader constituency because there are fewer of them, so they represent more people. A lot of them have generally more counties within. And a fun fact is that New Mexico has some of the largest districts in the entire United States because of our population. So we're a huge state with a lot of land and few people. So some of these legislative districts encompass multiple counties. So it's really important for those legislators to really understand who lives there, what's being done, and how they can support not only one area, but many areas. There are 26 Democrats in the Senate and 16 Republicans. And Senator Mimi Stewart of District 17 here in Albuquerque is the Senate President Pro Tem. Yes, we just restarted. So the last election brings us into year one. The leadership of the House of Representatives, of course, as I mentioned, the Speaker is Javier Martinez. Representative Rena Stepanski of Santa Fe is the Majority Floor Leader. Rep. De Hackman Vigil, also from Albuquerque, is the Majority Whip. And Raimundo Lara of the Las Cruces area is the Majority Caucus Chair. On the minority side, Representative Gail Armstrong is the Minority Floor Leader. Rep. Alan Martinez is the Majority Whip. And Representative Rebecca Dow is the Minority Caucus Chair. You'll see down below that it says something about SPCs. I'll talk about SPCs a little bit later, and there will be a little bit more on that piece. But then moving on to the Senate, again, Senator Mimi Stewart, President Pro Tem. Senator Peter Worth of Santa Fe is the Floor Leader. Senator Michael Padilla of the Albuquerque area is the Majority Whip. And then Senator Leo Jaramillo is the Majority Caucus Chair. Bill Scherer is the Minority Floor Leader. Pat Woods is the Minority Whip. And David Gallegos is the Minority Caucus Chair. So that's the leadership of both chambers. And of course, they work together. They also work separately. One of the really important things to highlight is also the difference, I don't know if this is picking up well on the screen, but the difference in the types of legislation that could be introduced during a specific year. People refer to it as, oh, a bill is introduced, and we hear that a lot. But a bill is only one version of a piece of legislation that can be introduced. So a bill is the form of legislation that is used to propose new laws, amend past laws, or amend current law, or repeal any type of law to get rid of it entirely. A resolution is a formal declaration of the legislature to request another body of government to do something. So say the legislature wants the Economic Development Department to do something, they can pass a memorial to address that. A resolution is something that's not technically covered by law, but some legislators will pass a resolution to express intent. So these are the three different types of pieces of legislation: a bill, a resolution, and a memorial. And how a bill becomes law. How many of you, when I say that, does it refer you back to grade school? I'm a bill, the song. That's exactly how the process goes. The bill is introduced and it is referred to committees. Typically it's 2 committees, but sometimes it can be 3, sometimes it could be 1. The committee reviews the bill, they debate the bill, they can pass the bill, they can table the bill, they can do whatever they want with the bill. And then the bill gets a committee report based on that action. Then there's third reading and the final passage after it's gone through all of its committees. So Bill A is introduced, it goes to 2 committees and passes both of those committees. Then it goes back to the floor for third reading to be passed by one chamber of the legislature. So say this is a House bill. It's being introduced on the House side, it goes through multiple committees, it's passed by the House. Now the process has to reset on the Senate side, and the Senate has to go through that same process. So the potential to really advocate for legislation is crucial. We can stand up in committee hearings, we lobby, we do all of these things to be able to influence legislation and get our point across and help advise legislators, because one of the most important things in New Mexico is that we have a citizen legislature. So every member of the legislature has another job that they're doing and they have expertise in. Not everyone's an expert in real estate. So it's really important for us to be able to advise and bring that conversation to the legislators, and they're really receptive. We're unique, we're one of the only citizen legislatures left. There has been a lot of conversation in a couple of different bills to try to change this, but it is definitely an interesting situation. If there is any disagreement between the chambers, say the bill was amended on the Senate side, the bill has to go back for concurrence on the House side. so to make sure that they're passing the same exact bill. Then the bill is enrolled and engrossed and sent to the governor for the governor to take action. And the governor can sign the bill, they can veto the bill, and they could take no action on the bill, which is called a pocket veto. And then after that, if it's passed and it's signed by the governor, it becomes law. So what happened this 60-day session? I want to hear from you guys. What do you think happened this 60-day session? What did you see on the news? Anyone?
I saw lots of talk and very little action.
Okay, lots of talk, no action. What else? The governor didn't like a lot of things that they passed. Okay. Soft on crime. Passed a budget. That's one of their biggest jobs during the session. Yes, they passed their budget. Anything else? Okay.
Former senator.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say though is I saw a little bit of a different narrative this year than we've seen in the past couple of years. There were a lot of, like you said, there were a lot of housing bills
Mhm.
that came out because everybody had an opinion on how to solve problems. But a lot of those bills had little to no substance. Like they were just trying to, and what was weird to me was that they had little to no substance and they were heard in committee very early. Like it wasn't a dummy bill that had just a title and it was sitting waiting to be heard. It was a dummy bill because it was really stupid and it was heard right away and shown how stupid it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never really seen that actually be entertaining before.
Mm-hmm.
I think it speaks to kind of the way that our legislators fight with it.
Sure. Thanks, Josh.
That brings up a question.
Yeah.
Because I really paid attention to this year for the first time. How do they decide what and when something comes up in front of committee? That seemed like just random chance.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question, Tigo, and your guess is as good as mine. The committee chairs do hold a lot of power in that they can see what bills are referred to their committee, and they create the agenda. I mean, they refer to the ranking member of the minority party, and they develop the agenda. So committee chairs really have the opportunity to control what gets heard and what doesn't. And we saw a little bit of that this year. We saw the governor call that out this year. We saw a couple of different things happen in the media, but it definitely was a very interesting session. If you'll remember, at sometime last year, the governor called the legislature into a special session to address public safety and crime, and the legislature essentially gavelled in, passed House Bill 1, which is the feed bill to fund the operations of the legislature, and they gavelled out. And they ended the session, and they didn't address any of the issues that the governor wanted them to address. So we came into the 57th legislature, this 60-day session, the regular session, where the executive and the legislature were at odds. They were not happy with one another. The governor was not happy that that happened. And so that's kind of how we started this session. And one of the agreements that the leadership of the legislature had this 60-day was that we will provide, within the first 30 days, a public safety package, and we will provide some other measures within the first 30 days. And we got to the end of the first 30 days, and that hadn't happened, but shortly after, they did pass a couple of different packages, and they were sent to the governor. So this year, largely the first couple of weeks of the legislature are ceremonial. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance. There's a lot of really getting footing of what legislators need to do and how the process works. But this year it was a sprint and a sprint. The first 30 days were a sprint. We got off the ground really hearing bills right away, and give them all the credit because 60 days is a long time when you're in one building and reading bill after bill after bill. Definitely not an easy feat, but it was a sprint and a sprint, and they were definitely tired by the end of the session. But this session spanned from January 21st to March 22nd. As I mentioned, it's a 60-day, so any legislator can introduce any legislation. Could be about whatever you wanted the topic to be. There's no limit on that. Again, 70 members in the House of Representatives and 42 members in the Senate. This is a very unique year because we just got out of a 4-year cycle, as Mr. Sandy Lee had mentioned. And so we had 112 members up for election last year, and we had 32 freshmen sworn in with this legislature. That's about a third of our legislature that was brand new, that took their oath of office and they were in session. So they had to quickly realize the process and understand, what they wanted to introduce and how they wanted to connect with their constituents and the type of legislation they wanted to bring forward. So that was definitely interesting. It's not an easy process. Staff is just like the members of the legislature. They come in for the 30 or 60 days, then they leave. They go back to do whatever job they have. Some of the staff is permanent, but a lot of them are not. And a lot of those staff people have institutional knowledge that they bring back to help the legislators with, because in some cases, these staff members have been in these positions for years on years through multiple different legislators. So it was definitely a very unique situation. We had many new legislators, but we had a good session. We did have the opportunity to pre-file, so bills could be introduced between January 2nd and January 21st before the session. And after the legislature gavelled in, they elected their officers. They knew what they wanted to do. Each legislative session starts with the state of the state, and that's where the governor comes in and talks about the different things that she would like to see the legislature do. It's not a mandate, but it's definitely an expression of what they would like to see. So Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham delivered her State of the State address. She talked about economic growth, job creation, education investments, public safety and child welfare, clean energy and climate initiatives, and of course, housing and real estate. Some of the housing initiatives that were mentioned included regulatory reforms for construction, $50 million for homelessness services, and the creation of a statewide Office of Housing. The governor has asked for this the past couple of legislative sessions, and she didn't get it last year, and she also didn't get it this year. So a little spoiler alert there, we'll talk about it a little later, but that was one of her main initiatives, is to create a statewide Office of Housing to be able to compile data to work with the New Mexico Mortgage Finance Authority, also known as Housing New Mexico, to really get some solutions created to help our housing shortage. Economic growth highlights. She highlighted some new jobs in the last 4.5 years, kind of highlighting her tenure as governor. Wage growth outpacing other states, and investments in advanced manufacturing and renewable energy. So that's how we started the session. And as we talked about, there were 1,328 bills introduced, 1,328 pieces of legislation introduced. Caught myself there. 1,182 of those were bills. So again, pieces of legislation that could create new laws, amend existing law, or repeal old laws. 102 of them were memorials and 44 resolutions. Out of all of that, out of those 1,328 pieces of legislation, 194 of those bills are passed and sent to the governor. So this is a small percentage, but this is very typical. It begs the question, if we have 30 or 60 days, should there be a limit on how many pieces of legislation can be introduced? Because when you have 1,328 bills, you're never going to get to all of those. So priorities are going to pop up, different groups are going to advocate, and what at the end of the session is anyone's guess. 102 are memorials and 44 resolutions. Again, 194 passed, and memorials and resolutions that were approved, there were 52. The New Mexico Association of Realtors actively tracked and took a position on 94 pieces of those legislation, and NMAR can act to support a bill, so stand up in committee and help it get across the finish line, to oppose a bill, to stop it in its tracks, and to monitor a bill. And the monitor category is probably one of the most important, in my opinion, because we put bills there that have the potential to make advancements, but that might need a little bit of work, that might need a little bit of advisement. And so we had many bills in that category. 90 of those bills were on property rights, housing, and real estate. There were 2 memorials regarding industry concerns and 2 joint resolutions that could potentially impact construction, which we were concerned about. So what do you guys think of those numbers? It is heavy. Lots of bills. A lot of bills. Not a lot passed. Some passed, not a lot. Correct. Correct. Yes. Yeah, passed both bodies and then went to the governor. So I believe she pocket vetoed 16 bills, and then there were a couple of line item vetoes. So I don't have the exact number, but there were quite a few this year. And as was mentioned, there was some tension between the governor and the legislature, and that resulted in some bills like, lowrider capital of the world's a license plate being vetoed. That was something that once that bill was in a committee, that was all anyone could talk about was the lowrider capital of the world's license plate. And that was vetoed. State bread, tortilla. That was passed this legislature, but the governor vetoed it, and she sent a message that she wanted the legislature to focus on issues and pass bills that were meaningful and not just bills that were pet projects. So that's kind of what we went through. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I can touch on that now. So your lobbying team, we have 3 different levels of lobbying at NMAR. We have our grass tops lobbying, and that is our state political coordinator program where we match up Realtor members with members of the legislature that provide insight, that serve as the expert to the legislators. Then we have our grassroots lobbying, which is the lobbying that's done by the entire membership. So when we issue a call for action and you get that email sent to you, please respond, send an email to your legislator. That is our grassroots lobbying, and that is our advocacy in action. We are the state's largest trade association, or the nation's largest trade association. I would think that that GAR is Greater Albuquerque's largest trade association. So numbers matter. And personal testimony matters, and our grassroots lobbying is some of our most important. In terms of compensated lobbyists, so the individuals that were there advocating every single day, I serve as a lobbyist for the association. Brent Moore of Moore Law has been a longtime lobbyist for us for about 18 years. He has served as a lobbyist. And your former CEO, Mr. Kent Cravens, came on to support us through this legislative session as a lobbyist for us as well. So that's our lobbying structure. Of course, Ashley Strauss-Martin, our general counsel, is integral to this process, reviews and gives legal perspective and supports our committee. And so she serves as a lobbyist, and of course, our CEO as well. So those are our lobbyists for the association. Yep, no problem. So now I'm going to go through bills, and I'll kind of run through all the bills that we tracked very quickly, and then I'll talk a little bit about the bills that were passed that were on our priority area, and then the bills that we helped to stop. So paid family medical leave has had quite a storied progression through the legislature. It did not make it this year, but that was a bill that we were certainly watching. A couple of land grant bills. We don't take positions on land grant bills, but it's important for us to know what's going on with the land grants and how that impacts private property and public property as well. Valuation of resting land in drought, landowner liability in special districts, housing income to rent screening calculations, property tax exemptions. That one made it across the finish line. We supported that one. Unfair Practices Act. This one had some issues because it included licensed professionals, which would have included you all as licensed real estate agents and brokers. But that one didn't make it through the process. We helped to amend that to get our membership out of that bill, but we still stayed in the opposed category for that one. Uniform Investigative Demand Procedure, another one that related tangentially to property rights. Automatic expungement of eviction records. We'll talk about this in a little bit later. Adding attorneys and contractors as property managers. This one was an interesting bill. We'll talk about that one a little bit later too. Banning discriminatory restrictive covenants. We provided some feedback on that one as well. Professional recruitment and retention. So this would help our medical community in terms of financing for homes through the Mortgage Finance Authority. Housing study for LEDA funds, we opposed that. Construction cost studies, Vacant Rural Building Act, we supported those. We had a very, very lengthy AI bill we had a couple of them actually this year. One of them was specifically for rent manipulation, and the other one was AI in general. Those are the beginning conversations of these bills, but we will certainly see those pop back up again. Another one was prohibiting certain homeowner association fees, sealing of certain court records, trade education assistance, public-private partnerships, Vibrant Communities Act, which is an interesting bill, taxation of certain agricultural land, development fees, removing unlawful occupants from property. So we had a couple of squatting bills this year. We were supportive of all of them. They had bipartisan and bicameral support, meaning that there was a Democrat and a Republican on all of them. They were introduced on the House side and the Senate side. So it was kind of like the dream of getting a bill passed, but none of these bills even got a hearing. One of them got a hearing, actually, but it was taken off the agenda. Squatting remains an issue. We'll continue to track this moving forward. There are already laws on the books, but all of these bills would have helped to enhance those. Housing construction tax credit. This is arguably one of the best bills introduced for housing. Got one hearing and we never heard about it again. Small business disaster relief. Another unlawful squatting. Housing construction curriculum. Housing discrimination and human rights act. Some changes to the property tax code. So the color coding on the screen, we supported the bills in green, opposed the bills in red, and if they're black, we monitored them. Not yet. We'll get there in a couple minutes. Yep. Some changes to property taxes, residential property valuation, some mobile home park bills, again, that Office of Housing Planning and Production, a credit worthiness program, non-payment of rent notice period, abandoned building, construction inspection licensing, acequia and water rights as material facts. This bill would have been the one that most impacted you. It would have required of the disclosure from the real estate broker, acequias and water rights in real estate transactions. We helped advise in that process. It stayed in our monitor category. Ultimately, it was heard. The sponsor didn't really have all of the information, and then she pulled it off of the agenda to never be heard again. But that one was definitely an interesting one, and we'll follow that if it comes back up. Funding for housing, civil legal services, residential home building reauthorization, a fire tax credit, building housing communities, statewide construction templates, redemption right of sale or transfer, pollutant discharge elimination, water quality and pollution. Those bills rolled up into one. Zero interest natural disaster loans, Wildfire Prepared Act, another land grant, insurance payment of depreciation, also relating to insurance for properties that were burned, Consumer Solar Protection Act, quite a few solar bills this year, nonprofit condo remote business, so now nonprofit condo associations are able to meet via Zoom and conduct their business. Purchase of single-family homes, this one we'll talk about a little bit later, but that was the bill heard across the real estate world, which would have limited any company, an LLC, a hedge fund, anything from purchasing a single-family home. We talked to the sponsor about this bill. It wasn't the intent, but it was certainly a very overreaching bill. Property Insurance Program Association Board, another solar bill, affordable housing funding for the Housing Trust Fund, invasion crimes for home invasions, strategic economic development site readiness, electronic disclosure for rental agreements, multifamily housing, veteran property tax exemptions, the Senate version of the State Office of Housing, rent control, of course, housing study for LEDA funds, Albuquerque-specific affordable housing, homeowner association law remedy, housing application fees, foster children and homeowners insurance, housing study for some development projects, building and zoning changes, Metro Redevelopment Code, zoning decision appeals, mobile home replacement initiatives, payments in lieu of taxes for property, housing support needs and stabilization, another squatting bill, release of certain people from rental agreements, affordable housing organization, research zoning matters. This is an interesting bill. This is a bill that was introduced that would have had one of the departments at UNM to study who was standing up and talking during zoning hearings in the Albuquerque and Santa Fe area. So it was an interesting one. We definitely would have popped up on this bill, on this list of people who were standing up and speaking. So it was interesting. Didn't get many more details other than that. Another one was minimum building code requirements and fire department. And I listed all of these. These are the 90 bills that we tracked. And as you can see, they're listed here, not because I wanted to go into depth with any of them, but just that they spanned all issues relating to real estate, from crime to affordable housing, you name it, it was introduced. And so those popped up this session. In terms of resolutions, House Joint Resolution 3 and Senate Joint Resolution 4, they're essentially the same thing. This is called the Green Amendment. And we have some concerns with this, and we've opposed it for the past couple of years because of what it might do to development. And when we're in a severe housing shortage, we need to do everything to make sure that we're protecting and making it easy for development to occur, not detrimental. Another one was a bill relating to emergency responders and the property tax exemption that they might get. And one memorial was on our list. And this memorial is actually a memorial that we introduced. We drafted the language and got it passed, but it's a short-term rental work group. How many of you are aware of short-term rentals and know that there are some short-term rental issues out there? Yes, I see many hands raised. So we drafted this memorial because the county assessors are reclassifying short-term rentals as from the residential category to the non-residential category, which means that these property owners lose their 3% cap. This is an issue. We have been talking with the assessors about this, but we were able to pass this memorial, and essentially what it will do is it'll create a task force, and it'll be individuals from the Economic Development Department, the Tourism Department, Taxation Revenue Department, NMAR will have an individual there, and someone from the Short-Term Rental Association. So we can talk about short-term rental policy, because largely it has been a local issue, but we're seeing it at the state level now. So to try to have some sort of standard for how short-term rentals work across the state and have some definitions, because we don't have anything at the state level. We have nothing there. So that's something that we... There was... It's a good question, Sandy Lee. The memorial specifically requested that the assessors stop the reclassifications. That is not going to happen. From conversations that we've had with the assessors, it doesn't supersede the way that they interpret law and the way that the statute reads. So they're going to continue to do that, but we are going to continue to work with them to try to get it addressed and potentially have a bill introduced either in the next 30 days or in the next 60 days. So definitely a lot of work going on there. But now we can kind of get more in depth on the key real estate related bills that we helped to pass. So one of them was House Bill 47. This is the veteran property tax exemptions. You might remember this because you voted on it in the last general election. And this bill cleaned up some of that language. So former Representative Eliseo Alcon of the Grants area passed two bills in the past session. And this bill was cleaning up some additional language to help spouses and additional people for their property tax exemptions. Another one was Senate Bill 169. This is definitely a big win for the commercial side and all real estate in general, really. But the Strategic Economic Development Site Readiness. So this allows the Economic Development Department to help prepare sites and make sure that businesses know that New Mexico is open for business. It's easier for them to just come and begin building. So helping them to have the infrastructure there so that they can, build their site and get going, because as you know, it's very costly to get infrastructure in to sites. And so this bill will certainly help with that. There was funding attached to this, so the Economic Development Department oversees that, but places can request the funding to help get the infrastructure in and get their site ready. Again, another one was that nonprofit condo association remote business. So condo associations were able to conduct business in person and virtually. But the way statute read, when it was updated a couple years ago, it left out the nonprofit condo associations. So those condo associations were required to meet in person. So this bill changed the language so that the nonprofit versions could meet virtually as well. So it was a small win, but a win is a win. Senate Bill 33, Wildfire Preparedness Act. This one was really important and establishes a comprehensive wildfire resilience program, including grants for the hardening of homes. As you know, wildfire continues to devastate the West, and this will help with defensible space and community preparedness initiatives. So if this is something you're interested in, your clients are interested in, this is a new program that will be out there. Another one is House Bill 571, Building Housing Communities. So this was a part of the housing bills. It was introduced and passed unanimously through both chambers, I think. But this one suffered from the pocket veto. So the bill was vetoed in the pocket version, so that means that the governor did not act on it. And so it is not law, but there's no reason as to why it was not passed or why it was vetoed. But this bill would essentially, and I expect it to come up again, this bill would essentially help municipalities get to a place where they can call themselves, to classify them in a different category to make them available for federal funding to help with housing opportunities. So this bill did not have any funding attached to it. It would just denote that they were a building housing community. So an interesting bill. We'll see if it comes up again. Again, I talked about the short-term rental work group. That one's going to come back up. On the Senate side, we had Senate Bill 320, Mobile Home Replacement Initiative. So this is more in the northern New Mexico. MFA now has this new program where manufactured housing can be replaced if it's in need of replacement for individuals who are over a certain age or don't have the resources. So that's a great new program that'll be offered by MFA. Senate Bill 350, Housing Support Needs and Stabilization. This bill will appropriate $6 million to the Healthcare Authority for housing and administers a housing stabilization program for formerly incarcerated individuals. So another housing program. Senate Bill 350, let's see. Senate Bill 422, Affordable Housing Organization Support. This bill, again, helps with affordable housing, provides $5 million through 2030 to fund operational support and technical assistance grants for nonprofits delivering affordable housing, transitional housing, and homelessness services. So definitely was a part of the governor's priority package, and this one made it through and made it into the budget. Senate Bill 232, this one's specific to the Albuquerque area, Albuquerque affordable housing. This is another appropriation bill, so would allocate funding specifically to the Albuquerque area. This bill suffered a line item veto. So this funding was supposed to be specifically for the Albuquerque area. The line item veto struck Albuquerque out of it, so now this funding is more for affordable housing in general and not earmarked for the Albuquerque area. So the funding's still there, still available. I anticipate that municipalities, county government will still request this money, but not earmarked specifically for Albuquerque any longer. So those are the bills that passed, that we helped to pass. Some of the bills that passed that we might not necessarily wanted them to, we had one in our opposed category that made it through the process. The Senate Bill 21, Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems Act. This is actually a bill that was two bills formerly, then it was amended to be one bill and rolled into one. It was heavily amended on the Senate side, heavily amended on the Senate floor, heavily amended on the House committee side, and heavily amended on the House floor. This bill, we were a little concerned about. This bill relates to the Waters of the United States lawsuit at the national level, a Supreme Court case, but this bill protects the waters in New Mexico at the local level. We had some concerns about how this might impact the construction of housing and development. So we're going to continue to watch this, but again, very amended bill. The bill essentially had strikes everywhere it went, but at the end, what was passed is Senate Bill 21, heavily amended. And then some of the bills that we monitored. So we weren't necessarily standing up in committee and supporting them and lobbying them, but bills that were on our list. Zero interest natural disaster loans. This will help areas that are impacted by fires, floods, you name it, whatever natural disaster, this bill will help with that. And it's a funding allocation, so it's a pot of money that individuals can apply for. Senate Bill 267, housing application fees. This bill, it relates to the Uniform Owner Resident Relations Act. So this will impact property managers. So if you're a property manager, please review this bill because this one will go into effect. But it requires landlords to disclose all rental-related fees up front and limits the application screening fees to $50 and imposing refund requirements in certain cases. And it sets a cap on late fees. So that's what that one does. That's correct, yeah. Mhm. Correct. Sure, yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's correct. That is the way this bill is being classified as the junk fee bill. Yep. It did, yes. So that made it. It did, yes. So it will become law. Oh geez. Yes, June 20th. Yeah. Thank you, Tika. Nope, you're good. No, I saw a hand back here. Uh-huh. Perfect. Yeah. Yes, 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 yes. So another hand back here. I'd have to reference the language in the bill. I can look and I can loop back around with you. I'm not too sure if it relates from here forward or if it impacts grandfathered in. Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Tigo. Yeah, I believe it's just the upfront fees. Is my understanding. On late fees, yes. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And yes. And And we're going to be doing an in-depth synopsis of all of the bills that made it on our list that we supported across the finish line and that we helped to oppose. So we will get a more detailed information on each of the bills. So look forward to that. Another one was a land grant bill, and the last was a housing credit worthiness assistance program. So this is another program housed within MFA that landlords can benefit from, individuals with credit scores that might not make them available to funding or may impact their ability to access housing. MFA now has a pot of money that individuals can help out with. So this can help reimburse landlords, things like that. So another good bill that'll be administered through MFA. and they will come up with all the criteria of how that gets funded. Some of the language was actually stripped in a veto, so MFA has the full autonomy to be able to determine how that'll work. So also some notable legislation that failed. So these are bills that did not pass. A couple bills that we supported, those bills to create the statewide Office of Housing did not make it across the finish line. The governor was not happy about this. There was some concern that this would duplicate efforts that the Mortgage Finance Authority currently already does. That was the argument that last year. This bill made it really far in the process this year and was almost there. It didn't get heard in Senate Finance and didn't make it across to the Senate floor. So that one died by just running out of time. House Bill 309, House Bill 332, and Senate Bill 359, these are those squatting bills. Those ones didn't make it across the process, but we supported those. Again, I mentioned earlier that housing construction tax credit. This would give a tax credit for housing construction costs. As you all know, it is extremely costly to even construct a house. And so this would have benefited developers to help create housing. That one did not make it across the finish line. It did have some issues, but we anticipate that we will see this again. House Bill 342, some property tax changes on the commercial side. We supported this. The bill has some issues. I anticipate that we'll have some continued conversations about how this will progress.
Well, that was a huge one. That was the one that Carmen and NIAF and all of us worked on for the better part of a year. Thought we had agreement, and fell through.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the one that was the disclosure one. That was the one where the commercial people were willing to give the equitable disclosure in order to not have the giant
Yep. 12 over 12. Yeah, 12% increases over 12 years was that. That was that bill. Yeah. So I do anticipate, there was a big stakeholder group that was formed. I do anticipate that this will be a continued conversation, and hopefully we can get to some agreement to see some form of legislation, not only introduced but passed. So we'll keep our eyes on that. And then our monitored bills. Again, I mentioned the Paid Family Medical Leave Act. We've been following this for a couple of years. That one had an ending on a Saturday that was kind of unexpected, but nonetheless. House Bill 215, no use of AI for rent manipulation, one of those AI bills. 502, acequia and water rights as material facts. I mentioned that one earlier as well. And then the researching zoning matters and speakers, that was that bill that I talked about that would put you on a list if you were speaking at zoning hearings. So some bills that we helped to stop, these were some big wins for us. House Bill 98, automatic expungement of eviction records. This would have cleared eviction records after, I believe this bill was 3 years. It would remove it from records, and you would not have access to that, so you wouldn't know who you're renting to. House Bill 100, attorneys and contractors as property managers. It was an interesting bill. It would allow attorneys and contractors to be property managers, just like real estate brokers. But as you know, we have some very strict policies on this through the Real Estate Commission. This would kind of supersede that. So that was an interesting bill. Senate Bill 77, again, this would limit the purchase of single-family homes from any business. So if you own an LLC, you cannot purchase any single-family homes. So we helped advise in this process that this was not a good bill, and thankfully got that stopped. And last but most certainly not least, we're going to see this from here on out, I think, that's my projection, is rent control. This bill is a conversation in many states. Rent control is a policy that NAR has studied extensively. We've done our research, we've brought in speakers, but rent control is a policy that doesn't necessarily help with housing development. It actually prevents developers from wanting to build in the areas. And while Senate Bill 216 would not institute rent control, it would allow municipalities to institute rent control. So right now in the state of New Mexico, we have a statewide prohibition, which in meaning, no municipality can enact rent control. If this bill were to pass, it would allow Las Cruces to do something different from Albuquerque, and Albuquerque to do something different from Rio Rancho, and so it would create a patchwork of issues across the state. So this was certainly a win, but I do anticipate that we'll continue to see rent control legislation. So with that, I do want to quickly go over House Bill 2, the General Appropriations Act of 2025. The total budget was $10.8 billion. This is an increase of 6% from the previous year. Again, some key allocations were education, public schools, higher ed, teacher salary increases, and healthcare, Medicaid expansion, opioid crisis response, infrastructure, broadband, transportation, public works, and then housing and homelessness, $110 million for affordable and transitional housing, $5 million for encampment response, and $36.8 million for housing capacity building. So those were the allocations that were made in House Bill 2, and we'll do a full run of House Bill 2 as well. Tax package, House Bill 14. This was an interesting one. The tax committees went into conference committee and had a proposed tax package. We didn't think we were going to get one this year. We got it, but it was vetoed. Not much to hang on to, but the entire tax package would have been funded from reserves. So, people had feelings either way on that one, but not something that we have to worry about because it was vetoed. But there were some really great ideas presented to both tax committees, and the tax committees are holding on to those ideas for a potential tax package in a future year. All vetoed. Yep, everything in that bill. And it was one of those omnibus bills. So there were different bills that were presented to the tax committee, and they rolled them all up into one. But that whole omnibus bill was vetoed. The session ended on March 22nd. So March 22nd around noon, the legislature adjourned sine die. And sine die just essentially means without any future date or designation. So essentially meaning that they're adjourned indefinitely unless they get called into a special session. The governor had until April 11th to sign veto or line item veto bills, and any bills that were not acted upon were pocket vetoed. There is the potential for a special session. The legislature continued to talk about public safety. The governor was not happy with what they passed in the session. So there's conversation about that. They are kind of at odds. So we'll see if a special session comes upon that. But another topic of conversation was if there are any federal cuts at the federal level to the budget, the state legislature will need to figure out how to address those cuts and see where the funding is going to come from. So we have the money, they just need to reallocate and see what works best for our state. So what's next? That's what happened in the legislature. What's next? We're continuing to advocate at all levels, national, state, and local. We will continue to monitor regulations and future legislative developments. We'll work on House Memorial 52 relating to the short-term rentals. And we are going to begin to set our legislative priorities for 2026. Mr. Josh Price was confirmed as our chairman for this year, so he will continue another year as chair, and he will lead the committee to develop our legislative priorities for the next year. So we always want to hear from our members, so if you have a great idea to help solve the housing crisis in New Mexico, bring it to us. We would love to work with you on it. Of course, we work with the regulatory framework as well, so Regulation Licensing Department, we know that there are issues there. We're working on those as well. NMAR is engaged, of course, all of our local associations as well, because that impacts all of our membership. And just a reminder, a single conversation with a lawmaker can echo through generations of homeowners. That's the power of realtor advocacy. I really want to touch on just a couple more things. We're almost there. But our state political coordinator program, this is one of our biggest programs. We're really ramping this up this year, but it's where we pair a realtor member with a member of the legislature to serve as the expert on real estate issues, to connect in district, to really talk about the issues that they can be the expert for the member of the legislature. So we're expanding this. It's our state political coordinator program is our grass tops advocacy, and really we're looking for realtor members to connect with the legislators, to create those relationships, and to really be the champion for the associations with our elected officials. So if you're interested in this program, please do let me know. We have quite a few SPCs in the crowd, so I can connect you with them so they can tell you about the program, but we definitely need more. We have about 70 legislators covered. We have 112 legislators in total, so we have a few more that we need to cover. Some of them are in the Albuquerque area, some of them not. So please, if you're interested, if you know someone who's interested, please do let us know. Our Issues Advocacy Fund Committee, this is something we have at the state level. we have funds available for local associations to support or oppose good or bad policy at the local level. So, if you see something coming up in city council or with the county commission, know that NMAR is ready to support, and we have funds available for you to help, support, get something across the finish line, or help to oppose it, whether it's, public relations campaign, what have you. This is our way of helping to support our local associations across the state. And then I'll quickly just touch on RPAC. RPAC, of course, is our political action committee, specific to the Realtor Association. Any dollar that you invest in RPAC gets split up between the local, state, and national level. So 30% is sent to NAR for them to use for federal candidates. We use 35% of the dollar at NMAR for state candidates, and the local level uses 35% to support local candidates as well. GAR's 2025 goal is $171,208, 39 major investors investing $1,000 or more, and participation is 37% of the membership contributing, which is 1,456 members. All of these dollars help to advocate. They help us to be the real estate. They help us to have conversations and really show what we're made of. RPAC is so important. If you have information out to your staff here at GAR, us at NMAR, we're happy to talk more about it. In terms of, here's kind of just a where we're at. 8% to our fundraising, 31% participation. We have 20 investors and 12 investors. With that, thank you for joining today. Here's my contact information. If you'd like to get in touch, you'd like more about any of the programs we have. On the screen is a QR code. You can scan this if you'd like to provide any this presentation. You'd like to express interest in any of our advocacy programs, or if you'd like to just request on anything. So the QR code is there. There are a couple of little pamphlets and handouts in there. I thank you for your time. Use this to for our legislative session. This reviews everything essentially that I went over today, but you can take this and share it with the other brokers in your office. So with that, I thank you, and I'll stand for questions, but I know, yeah. Thanks, everyone.